Hello friends, and thank you for joining me for some well-earned comforts. My name is Sam, and in honor of spooky season, let's talk about Tolkien's spookiest beings, the Barrow Wights. To understand the Barrow Wights, we need to know where they originated. They first appear in the Barrow Downs, a familiar place to most Tolkien readers, more on Frodo and the Hobbits' encounter later. The Barrow Downs, or Tir Garthad, was an area of low hills located to the east of the Shire and the Old Fortress, and west of the village of Bree. They were made by men in the First Age and served as resting places for the men of the North. In the Second Age, Dunedain refugees from Numenor made Tir Garthad a part of Elendil's northern kingdom of Arnor. Arnor was then broken into 3 different realms, and in the Third Age, the Barrow Downs became part of the realm Cardolan. So, what's happening in Middle-earth right now? Well, at this point, the strife between Sauron's forces and the men of the North was great, and the Witch King was hard at work. When Cardolan fell to the Witch King of Angmar in Third Age 1409, the Dunedain took refuge in the Barrow Downs until the Great Plague wiped out the survivors. The Great Plague began in the east beyond Mordor, reaching Osgiliath in Third Age 1636. The new king, Telmanar, died along with all his children, as well as many others of the Dunedain. These losses served greatly to weaken the people of Gondor. The plague had hit first in Rhûn and Rhovanion. After the plagues had passed, more than half the people had been killed. From Osgiliath, the plague spread west and then north. Minhiriath and Cardolan were especially hit hard, and the remaining population of those regions were mostly wiped out. The last of the Dunedain of Cardolan died at the Barrow Downs. Thankfully, the plague weakened as it passed north, and Arthedain was scarcely affected, although the Shire was hit harder, with the Hobbits suffering great losses. There's an old video game adaptation that has the Witch King responsible for the plague, but nobody knows where it came from originally. Now, speaking of the Witch King, he unleashed apparitions, known as the Barrow Wights, upon Tir Garthad to haunt its great tombs of men for over a millennia. In Third Age 1851, King Araval of Arthedain attempted to resettle Cardolan, but the settlers were driven off or killed by the terror and power of the Wights. But what is a Wight? Wights appear as dark phantoms whose eyes were luminous and cold, and whose voices were horrible yet hypnotic. Their skeletal hands had a touch like ice and a deadly grip. Victims under a Wight spell would lose their will. In this way, the Barrow Wights drew the living into the tombs of the Downs. Some, if not all, victims were laid on a stone altar and bound in chains of gold, to then be draped in pale cloth and jewelry of ancient dead, and killed by a Wight with a sacrificial sword. In the darkness, Wights were powerful spirits, resisted only by strong incantations, such as Tom Bombadil's song. Dependent for many centuries on the dark security of burial vaults, they feared the sunlight and would be diminished in exposure to it. Sound familiar? Dementors, anyone? On September 28th of the year 3018, Frodo Baggins and his companions Sam Gamgee, Meriadoc Brandybuck, and Peregrine Took, while passing through the Barrow Downs, were captured by Wights and trapped in what was believed to be the cairn of the last prince of Cardolan. Here I'm going to read an excerpt from the Fellowship of the Ring describing their traumatic experience. He, Frodo, turned, and there was in the cold glow he saw lying beside him Sam, Pippin, and Merry. They were on their backs, and their faces looked deathly pale, and they were clad in white. About them lay many treasures, of gold, maybe, though in the light they looked cold and unlovely. On their heads were circlets, gold chains, and about their waists on their fingers were many rings. Swords lay by their sides, and shields were at their feet. But across their 3 necks lay one long, naked sword. Suddenly a song began, a cold murmur rising and falling. The voice seemed far away and immeasurably dreary, sometimes high in the air and thin, sometimes like a low moan from the ground. Out of the formless stream of sad but horrible sounds, strings of words would now and again shape themselves. Grim, hard, cold words, heartless and miserable. The night was railing against the morning, of which it was bereaved, and the cold was cursing the warmth for which it hungered. Frodo was chilled to the marrow. After a while the song became clearer, and with dread in his heart he perceived that it had changed into an incantation. Cold be hand and heart and bone, cold be sleep under the stone, never more to wake on stony bed, never till the sun fails and the moon is dead, and the black winds and the stars shall die. Still on gold here let them lie, till the dark lord lifts his hand over sea and withered land. He heard behind his head creaking and scraping sound. Raising himself on one arm, he looked and saw now in the pale light that they were in a kind of passage which beyond them turned a corner. Round the corner a long arm was groping, walking on its fingers towards Sam, who was laying the nearest, towards the hilt of the sword that lay upon him. The arm crept nearer. Suddenly, resolve hardened in him, and he seized the short sword that lay beside him, and kneeling, he stooped over the body of his companions. With what strength he had, he hewed at the crawling arm near the wrist, and the hand broke off. But at the same moment, the sword splintered on the hilt. There was a shriek, and the light vanished. In the dark was a snarling noise. You know what happens next. Merry old Tom Bombadil comes to save the day. The mysteries of Tom Bombadil are many, but we'll save that for another time. It is possible that the Witch King himself had visited the Barrow Downs during the Ringwraith's search for Frodo, and it was he who had roused the Barrow Wights to be vigilant for trespassers on their land. The Barrow Wights are creepy, crazy creatures of Tolkien's legendarium, scary and very fit for spooky season. Thank you again for joining us for some well-earned comforts. If you could, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment on the video below. It'll help boost the channel. Until next time, friends, we bid you a very fond farewell.